Welcome to another episode of the Farzad Misbahi podcast. Today, I have Australia's crown jewel, the host of Solving the Money Problem, Mr. Stephen Mark Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you for coming here to talk with me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Of course.
I think you oversold me a little bit, by the way.
No way. That's my opinion, man. I think you do such a great job with the channel. You know, the growth you've experienced in your channel. I remember when you first came out a little over a year ago now, I think, with the Cybertruck video and just kind of the growth of your channel. I think this really speaks to the incredible work you do. So yeah, man, I just say how it is from my end, man. I really enjoy your content, and I'm really happy that you've come on here to speak with me. It's going to be super fun.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So the one thing I want to start off with, so you did talk with Dave Lee about a year ago, and that was a great conversation, but there was one nugget that you dropped that you used to play bass in a metal band. Tell me more about that, please. I want to know more because I'm a guitar player and I'm a huge metalhead, and I want to know more.
Okay. So I suck. It's a long story, but the short version is a friend and I were joking around about how we'd rather see really bad covers of songs we like than the current bands that we were watching in Sydney at the time. Yeah. And my friend sort of challenged me and said, "Why don't we start a band?" I'm like, "I can't play anything." So next minute I learned bass and vocals, and we started playing covers, had a bit of fun. That was short and sweet, high energy, played a few shows, lots of people there because a lot of people agreed with our thesis about the current bands. So we had pretty packed first few shows and had a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Do you still play? Are you still playing your bass?
No, I mean, I never really saw myself as a bass player either. It's just I needed to do bass and vocals in this band because it was a three-piece. So I just figured out how to do it. I'm actually more interested in guitar, so I play a little bit of guitar here and there, but I suck shit. I'm bad, but I have fun. I enjoy the process. And I've intentionally decided I don't want to get too technically proficient because the thing that I enjoy most about playing guitar is actually trying to figure out songs, like listen and play along. And if I have too much music theory, it's going to be so easy for me. Oh, that's that key and this, that, and the other. So I play guitar a lot more recreationally. I get a lot of pleasure out of kind of struggling my way through things rather than taking the typical path and just getting to a shred master level. Gotcha.
Okay. And is it still sort of the metal type music that you're playing nowadays as well? Like what kind of music do you play?
Yeah. I mean, I like stuff, generally speaking, that requires some proficiency on the instruments. So heavy metal is a good example. Progressive rock, sort of old stuff as well, bit of 80s things. Even some older pop songs, back when the guitar solo was not a crime to put in a pop song. So
right.
Mostly metal, a bit of jazz, a bit of funk too. Funkadelic, one of my favorite bands. They have a lot of terrible songs, but some amazing stuff too.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, we had a metal cover band back in when I was like in my teens. My brother was the drummer, and we did a bunch of like Metallica covers. We did like Opeth. I really got into Gojira big time.
Difficult stuff to play. So some of them,
Metallica
too for the speed.
Yeah. And the thing I really liked about Opeth was sort of that crazy mix they have of like the progressive, clean. I don't know how much you're into Opeth, but like right now they're like
I'm not a super fan, but I've heard all of their music and I have a great appreciation of what they've done. What you're talking about there, the contrast between the really intense, heavy death metal stuff and then the more acoustic, melodic. It's a great contrast. I really like seeing that in music.
Yeah.
One of my favorite bands is Agalloch, and they do that very well.
What is it called? Agalloch?
Agalloch, yeah. It's the name of the smell produced from burning some random wood. Very obscure, but they made some very interesting sort of progressive music like that.
Okay, that's awesome. I love how like a lot of metal bands have like these super obscure, super deep meaning like names, and it's always like I'm like, that's so metal. But when I heard that you talking about that, I'm like, oh my god, I gotta ask him about it because I remember when we had our band, we were like, it was so hard to find a bass player, and that's the one thing that we always had such a hard time finding. Is like, oh my god, like nobody plays bass.
Yeah.
I play bass.
No one wants to play bass. I hate to be so like elitist with the positions in a band, but nobody cares about the bassist in general. And I know that sounds terrible, but many more guys especially like want to play guitar or do vocals, right? It's more of a like, and so a lot of bass people who are amazing at what they do, there's just not that much demand out there.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, right. That's so funny. That's
awesome.
All
the bass players who are crying at the moment.
Hell yeah. Shout out to all the bass players. Keep playing bass.
Among you. Exactly.
Keep playing bass. I'm
a bass player.
Oh my God. That's so awesome. Yeah. I appreciate you going into that. Cool. Yeah. I guess to shift gears, the Tesla earnings happened a couple of days ago. I saw you put out a video yesterday, sort of recapping some of the analyst reactions and all the things that happened. Mm-hmm. But I'm really curious, like, after a couple of days of absorbing it, what's sort of front of mind for you from that perspective? Like, what are the things you're thinking about it as it pertains to Tesla and earnings and moving forward?
Well, I think the main takeaway, which hasn't really changed over the last few days, it's still the same thing, is the emphasis on bot. Tesla is really making a shift now towards AI and the humanoid robot. And the opportunity here, I discussed this more in a video I recorded today. It hasn't dropped yet, but probably by the time this goes live, people just aren't getting the implications here. Tesla, in theory, if things go as they plan or relatively well, can literally scale the global economy by multiple orders of magnitude. This is insane. It's absolutely insane. Like if you look at world GDP today, it's like about $100 trillion. That could easily double 10x, 100x or more. And people might think this is insane. But if you actually think through the numbers, how many productive hours a day can a robot produce? Does it need to get tired, sleep, blah, blah, blah? You realize the numbers are insane. Even if it takes a while to get to human level for most tasks, even something that's below human level will still be able to work 3 or 4 times as many hours in a week. So the implications are bananas. I don't think people are getting it. It's just too outside the box. But it's huge. Cars are last decade, Like it's really going to be about the bots and AI. And this is something that I've been nerding out over for like 20 years. So it's familiar territory for me when Tesla's talking about bots and maybe AGI. It's like, well, yeah, this makes sense. But I think a lot of people, this concept is so novel. They haven't really thought about the fact that you could actually make bots, and they don't understand the concept of artificial general intelligence getting to human level and beyond, and how quickly that can happen, that it just doesn't compute. If Wall Street understood Tesla, everything after the call would be, holy crap, Tesla's all in on bots.
Right.
And then they would just say, we're completely redoing our model now, going to integrate AI, but people aren't thinking about it. The other thing is the bot. Think about, just to pull a magic number. Let's say that there's 100 million bots in the future one day. Imagine if each of those is paying a monthly fee for Tesla's like AGI, robot AI. The numbers get bananas. And it's not just one-off sales of the hardware, but it's the software. And same strategy, deploying vehicles to solve autonomy, deploy the early AI in humanoid form to solve AGI.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, big implications.
I agree with you 100%. I always find it so fascinating, and this is not, I don't want to like sort of demean the work of analysts on Wall Street or anything like that, but it just seems like for some reason, these long-term potential massive implications of a company like Tesla and what they're working on, it often just gets either ignored or there isn't enough work being done to really fully understand it so that it can be explained to the masses. It's kind of like, well, I believe it when I see it. But like, I feel like as an analyst or somebody that's doing that work, some of the work should be, hey, like try to think forward. Like what could be the implications? Like what could happen? Do you think about that? Like what's your take on that? Because I'm always like why is it you, me, Dave Lee, and like 5 other people on YouTube or whoever else follows these channels that are talking about this, but it's not really part of the mainstream conversation. What's the dynamic that you think drives that? I'm very curious to hear.
I think there's a few factors. One of them is that a lot of folks on Wall Street are extremely conservative and just don't want to be wrong. They're like petrified of mistakes. They'd rather underestimate and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And they're basically just, I don't want to be so demeaning, but in general, they're a gigantic bunch of pussies. It's just groupthink. And like, you don't want to be that crazy analyst who says something like, imagine you are Cathie Wood of ARK, but you're an analyst. You get laughed out of your job. You never get hired again on Wall Street, right? And then next minute, you're right. But there's also, I think, a lot of the training where it's just like these guys and girls just can't get out of cell D39 in their spreadsheet. That's a car company. I've seen it 1,000 times. They just project the paradigm, that sort of model they've got in their head of that's what that is. And I don't know, it's kind of like if you do the same thing enough, you just get a little bit intellectually lazy. And a lot of analysts don't actually see Tesla for what it is. And they can't even see that there's stuff that they can't see. They're just completely blind to the additional stuff. And also just being very conservative. And I think most analysts are just reasoning by analogy on Tesla, which is the wrong way to go. You really got to think about the company, not how does it compare to this, that, or the other. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And I think there are some analysts, honestly, who are a lot smarter than you might see from their public commentary. But they don't, like I said, they don't want to get laughed off Wall Street. They don't want to say something where their peers are just completely, and it doesn't play out for 5 or 10 years because no one's going to remember what they said in 5 or 10 years' time anyway. There's also, I think, a very short-term focus with Wall Street. It's almost like a lot of the analysts see themselves as reporters. They're telling you what already happened. Like Tesla had a better than expected quarter.
Right.
We're raising our price target. Whereas there's not a lot of proactivity. Like this is where we see the company going, hey, that's the way that Wall Street is. It is what it is. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
the mental models, I think that most of the sort of traditionally finance trained people on Wall Street have, oftentimes are preventing them from seeing what's there. And there's a short-term focus as well, and just being scared to go out on a limb.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I agree with everything you just said there. It's just really fascinating, the sort of the dynamic of this sort of Tesla YouTube, like yourself and others that have really helped a lot of us really to understand Tesla a little bit better from a future perspective. It's just that dynamic is so fascinating. And I think, and what's been really cool is that like there's sort of this merging with some analysts, like I know Gary Black, Pierre Figueroa, or I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's got one of the coolest accents ever. Farragut, that's right. He's my favorite Frenchman, is what I like to say. Pierre is the best. And there was one other one too that I forget. Dan Ives was another one that sticks out. Like I kind of like how they're starting to sort of merge into this world a little bit, and they're trying. They're really having those conversations with sort of the folks that seem to understand Tesla maybe a little bit better than your typical analyst would. And I think that's overall that's pretty healthy, and that's been very fascinating to see. But
I think small steps, but it's good to see. Yeah,
for sure. And so as far as the call itself goes. Are you surprised by the short term price action that's happening with Tesla? Is this another just the market's going to be irrational?
I mean, it's just macro environment, people panicking, whatever. I'm a long term investor. I don't really care. I pay attention out of interest, but whatever. I'm just buying the dip. I've been loading up, postponing paying my tax bill as long as I can, and just buying with every spare cent.
Nice. That's awesome. What do you think are some of their biggest hurdles this year? So if you're going to think about Tesla and 2022, what are things that stick out to you from a hurdles perspective?
It's just execution and constraints with supply and supply chain stuff. If Tesla can navigate those things, the limiting factor is just how much can they produce. They're the big factors. Can they get enough supply, parts, materials, and can they actually put them together and produce the vehicles? Outside of that, I think at this point in time, it's fairly straightforward. The 4680 is not super urgent. I mean, progress on that's great, but honestly, if it doesn't happen for 6-12 months, it doesn't even matter. I'm really focused on just what's happening with this S-curve of growth for Tesla, and it doesn't really matter if it shifts 3, 6, 9, 12 months in either direction. It's just what's the overall trend. And they're just climbing the S-curve at the moment. That's all they got to do this year. Just keep climbing.
Yeah. Okay. And then as far as the one thing I started really thinking about a little bit more, and I don't know if this is legitimate, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but the whole dynamic with so I live in the US, and there's like all this US China tensions that people keep talking about. Right. And in my head, I'm like, okay, so what are some worst case scenarios that could happen with Tesla? It's like, okay, China, pulls the rug under Tesla. They say, American car company, I know we had the deal where, you're 100% fully run, but guess what? We're changing the terms because we're China and we can. Do you think that's a legitimate fear? Because I've heard some folks talk about it, and I'm trying to think about it from like a sociopolitical perspective. And I'm like, okay, is that really legit? Like, have you thought about that? Do you feel like that's a legitimate? Yeah.
I get asked about this a lot, especially on like my Patreon Q&As. It comes up pretty often.
Okay.
I see it as an extremely, extremely unlikely option. It might happen in like a crazy scenario, but China's welcomed Tesla with open arms. They've got special financing deals. The red carpet was rolled out. All kinds of perks for Tesla. China wants Tesla in there. It's to China's benefit for their goals for the environment and economy. Plus, there's a bit of prestige having this really great high-end, sort of, generally speaking, Tesla has a great reputation as a global brand. Sort of, roll out the red carpet for Tesla and for China to really be a hub of the EV market. I think it's in their best interest to allow Tesla to continue to execute. So sure, there might be a few things here and there where they try to advantage local players a bit more, but I don't see anything drastic like Tesla get out happening unless it's an extremely unlikely scenario. Possible, but who cares? Even if that happens, big deal. You got Berlin, Austin, Fremont, who cares? Whatever, it's really a speck in the scheme of things. And that today versus the scale Tesla will be in 10 years, it's irrelevant anyway.
Right. And especially if you start layering sort of that, like we talked about the bot a little bit earlier, and then, it really does become, it's really short-term fears that become irrelevant long-term, right?
Exactly.
But there's always like a part of me that I'm like, man, like, am I discounting it? But I mean, hearing you talk about it and like really giving us some thought, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we'll see if it does become a legitimate concern, but I think your point of like, the whole welcoming with open arms, like China knows what they have. Like they know that Tesla's going to help them as well. And that's kind of like,
of course. It's going to help everyone.
Right. Yeah, it's not
Got to
like
lift the whole EV industry in China too, because there'll be talent that moves on from Tesla. The whole ecosystem grows. So it makes
right.
so much sense to have Tesla there. So
Yeah, and it's like Tesla's not really an American car company. It's like a global company. It really is, and its reach.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating. And then so competition. I know that's something that you talk about sometimes.
I can't even say it with a straight face. I can't even hear it with a straight face. I couldn't even listen to that without smiling.
Every time I watch your videos, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you do this really cool thing where you sort of mix just spitting straight facts and then with humor, and then also being really, really honest about how you perceive something, right? But like, do you foresee anything from a competition perspective that could change? Like, is there anything out there legitimately like that you're saying, yeah, well, if this comes up, it could eat into Tesla's market share, or it could pose a problem to Tesla long term? Are there any inklings, any hints, any situations where you think that's actually the case?
No.
Okay.
I mean, no. I sound a bit deluded saying that, but I have actually thought about this pretty deeply. You know, the hours that I've spent looking at this from every angle in terms of competition. Tesla's lead is literally unassailable. No one's catching up. They're moving faster. They're so far ahead. The things that they're doing, no other company can either afford to take the risk or could execute. Like every engineer at Tesla would have to resign overnight, and Elon would have to quit for me to maybe change the theory there. Right? Okay. You know, the culture of the company is going to keep them moving forward at a pretty good clip, I think. So, you know, there'll be companies that go in little tiny segments of the market Tesla doesn't bother with. They'll do well there. Lucid's a good example. If they can actually do really good with the super high end, just total wankery, you know, absolute peak of the luxury market, they can have that. Like Tesla doesn't care about that segment of the market. So there can be areas where, you know, competition does well in an area that Tesla won't play. Another one will be really tiny compact cars that have no safety features that sell for a few grand. Tesla won't do that because they're unsafe. They won't make unsafe vehicles. But there's other companies that can do that, and it's a big market. In China, you know, every month, like 4,000 plus of those tiny little wheeling mini EVs, I think they're called, are selling. It's insane numbers. Like the second, third best selling vehicle in China, electric vehicle in China. But Tesla's not going to do that. So those are the only areas I really see an incredible competition in terms of actually being able to sell vehicles, because Tesla's not competing there. But if you're trying to get to mass market, just give up, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, go for like a tiny, narrow application, or Tesla's going to put you out of business. Right.
Yeah, the longer time passes, it seems like that's becoming more and more true, right? Unless there's something, like you said, that either happens from a Tesla perspective, where Tesla collapses under its own weight, or something happens that we haven't seen yet, right? Like some sort of thing bubbles up that just hasn't existed and it appears out of thin air. Like
exactly. Yeah.
You know, okay. I wanted to mention this earlier, but I mentioned this now. You know, you're a very popular guy within Tesla. People watch your stuff, man. Like when I was
do know people watch. Yeah. Tell me
Tell
some stories. What do you got?
Yeah, it was so funny. Like the one day I would show up, and then they're like, "Oh my God, did you see Steven's video on this price target for Tesla? He thinks it's going to go here." And this is like in 2019, 2020. I forget exactly when it was. It was right when you started making videos, and the stock still
late 2019, early 2020.
Exactly.
Probably around $35, $40 a share. Pre-split.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh my God, do you think Steven is right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think he's right." You know, he seems like he really understands the company, because, you know, we had these like internal classes where myself and somebody else like gave like these stock education classes for the staff, because a lot of people can buy stock. You know, they can buy stock in the company and they get compensated in shares. And once your video started popping up and others, a lot of people gained so much interest and like, "Oh my God, I really want to learn how to invest because I'm working for this company." And then you got Steven and others saying that it's going to explode. Like, how do I do this? And then I literally sat down and I'm like, this is what a market cap is. This is what a stock price is. You know, like kind of giving the fundamentals. Because a lot of these people, like, they don't have you'd be surprised just how illiterate most people are when it comes to like the stock market. Like, what is a market cap? Most people, you know, if they think of a stock price, they think of a stock price, not the market cap. And I always found that so fascinating. But you're a popular, and you still are. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware. Like a lot of people listen to you in Tesla. Yeah. No pressure.
Yeah. No, it's all good. I actually started getting a lot of DMs when I launched the channel from people in Tesla. It's like either, "Hey, cool channel. Like, this is cool. You're talking about this." And other people like, "Dude, we are doing this," or "You nailed it. Holy crap. Like, how'd you figure this out?" Just from some of my, you know, ideas about what might happen in the future. A lot of people reaching out and go, "Dude, you nailed it. I can't tell you how I know, but So that was kind of cool to see. And I did a poll a while ago. It was really rough, but I sort of extrapolated from that. Maybe around 5% of Tesla was watching at the time. This was really much smaller company though. I think it would be far less than that at this point in time, but it's nice to know. And it's also good, to get a little bit of feedback from the thinking versus the reality as well. So
sure, absolutely. Nice. And then,
by the way, Elon, big shout out to all the Tesla employees, you guys and girls doing a great job.
Yes, agreed. They're
like really.
The talent, man, like I talked about this in one of my videos, but it's just so shocking. Just the Tesla's ridiculous ability to just attract like super talented people that are like-minded in wanting to execute against a mission. Like the amount of people that are so just like it almost feels like the military. Like I've never been in the military, but it has that sort of like very overarching, bigger than yourself, like get in there. It doesn't matter how much it hurts, you got to get after it. And I still feel like, and having worked it, I still feel like that's not super well understood, but like you and others seem to really understand that it really comes down to execution of the staff. Tesla's products are a reflection of its staff, right? And if Tesla is able to get the most talented people that they can, they're going to have incredible products, and it's going to be impossible to match that unless a company exists that has similar core values,
Exactly.
But I just wanted to say that because it's like it's still shocking to me to this day that, and it's still not well understood. And until a company comes across that can capture that, I think that they're going to struggle. Like talking about the competition variable. How do you feel? Like, well, since we're talking about Tesla employees, like Elon himself, replies to your tweets. He likes your tweets. How does that feel? Like, do you feel pressure from that? Like, how does that make you feel? Are you happy?
I mean, might just be an autism thing. I don't give a fuck. Like, okay. I mean, it's useful to know that there's an open dialogue there, and I can bounce ideas, and occasionally there's feedback. But I know a lot of people get very excited, and I totally understand. But I've never been somebody to sort of pedestalize people. Like even in my heavy metal days, I got to meet all the favorite people from every band that ever came to Australia because I was doing reviews. I get in for free, go backstage. And people were like, wetting their pants, like shaking, getting records signed. And these were some of my heroes as well. But I'm like, it's cool, but I don't really get sort of pumped. So it's nice to know. I don't really feel anything about it, to be honest. I'm glad other people get a lot of joy out of it. But it's useful, like I said, to know that if I can tweet something to Elon, he's probably going to see it, or at least there's a chance I might be able to bounce some ideas. Especially like a lot of my thinking, I've just been basically saying things that Elon hasn't said yet at him, to see if he'll say you're right kind of thing, just to check if I'm on the right path. It's useful in that regard. Like AGI I've been talking about for a few months before Elon's really mentioned anything. And now he's actually, weird story, but one of my patrons or something figured out he'd liked a tweet I made about AGI and then unliked it or deleted or something like that. But at this point in time, he's basically out of the AGI closet. We know the future plans for Tesla. So it can be useful for throwing that stuff out there and seeing what happens as well.
Got it. Okay. That's very interesting. So it's interesting you say that because, if I picture myself, I can't remember if I dreamt this or this actually happened, but I feel like it actually happened. I think Elon did reply to one of my tweets like a long time ago. And I think it kind of went back to the back of my head. And I felt that excitement. I'm like, oh my God, Elon Musk, he replied to my tweet, blah, blah, blah. But it does sound like you're not faced by that. You're not frazzled by that. Do you find that, does that extend to the rest of your life? And if that's the case, is that an advantage that you have over other people, you think, that you just don't get frazzled by what most people might get frazzled by or might get impacted by? Like, does it allow you to think more clearly? I want to really dig into this. Like, how do you think about that?
Good question. I think it does allow me to think more clearly. I'm fairly logical in general. It's just kind of my personality, my innate, just the way that I am, I guess. But I think a lot of people tend to act emotionally in life about as many things as, their emotions sort of dictate. They don't really think about it. And I try to be as rational about as many things as I possibly can. This is great when dealing with risk, volatility. People, when I first started investing in real estate, were like so scared that I'd lose everything because I was buying in the same area just over and over. No, I just became an expert in this area and the opportunity here and could find great deals. And so a lot of people coming from a place of fear, meaning well, and then they're scared, they never want to invest, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, let's look at the numbers, think about the worst case scenarios and be pretty logical about it. Seems to be pretty helpful most areas of life.
Gotcha. Okay. That's very interesting. And then I want to ask you a question. If it's too personal, please let me know.
Nothing. Nothing too personal.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay. Because I really
it's 1 inch. It's 1 inch. Wait, did I say that?
Okay.
Sorry. Cut that out. Cut that out.
That's staying in, Steven. That's the
Yeah,
if there's one thing that's going to stay in, it's that. That's so funny. Oh my god, that's freaking hilarious.
Yeah. Make sure you do leave that in.
Oh no, I will. Don't worry. Yeah, I like to keep these like just raw. You know, it's just I like these very conversational things. Just kind of, you know, it's just really cool. Like we all share like so many things. I feel like as humans, and like this is like the fun part of it. You know, getting to know 100%. Somebody, like their sense of humor. You know. So you know you're open about being on the spectrum. You know, you have Asperger's, right? And so I'm curious. Like, do you think that is like? The way I perceive that is I view it as a superpower that folks have. You know, it's like you know, I have very little exposure to it. I've had some friends that are on the spectrum, but I don't really understand it well. But the one thing that's
half the people you worked with Tesla were probably on the spectrum.
Probably, right? Because like and I know like hyper focus is attributed to that, you know, being able to like solve difficult problems on the fly. Like I would be like shocked at how some people can basically like they almost have like this unlimited database in their brain, and they can just go through all the variables and then like, okay, here's the answer. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like I don't know how you arrived to this solution so quickly. And also like the logical, you know, like the logical approach and being unfazed by like irrational emotions. I feel like it's another advantage that folks on the spectrum seem to have. Like, do you think about that often? Do you feel like you have a superpower in a sense? I'm curious to hear your perspective.
It's a good question. I would say technically, you know, there's an aspect that's a superpower, but there's also a penalty on the other side as well. You know, some things for example, I mean, 95% of the stuff that comes with being on the spectrum, I love it. It really helps in life. You know, I have an excellent life. I'm fulfilled, satisfied, happy, healthy. I've got great relationships, great connection with like all the boxes that you'd want to tick generally in life are ticked. And I think a lot of that's come down to my approach and my way of sort of seeing a lot of stuff. But there's 5%. And the big one for me every day is having extremely limited energy. So I have 2 speeds, it's on or off. And even just for example, this conversation, maybe 60, 90 minutes, give or take, let's call it. I'll feel the effects of this for the next few days. It's going to be harder to get videos done. I'm going to be more tired. My brain's not all going to be there. So I have things that for most people don't seem to take any energy, deciding what to have for lunch, etc. It actually drains me. It's like I have a tiny cup of energy and other people have a bucket every day. So I have to be very selective about how I spend my little cup of energy. And so that's probably the biggest challenge that comes with it. And I can push through that. I've done that for years. I spent basically the first 30 plus years of my life perpetually burnt out because I didn't realize this about myself. I just keep pushing through, but it just gets harder to get through each day and become a little bit more miserable along the way. So I figured out a lot more recently, I really have to manage my energy. And so the one thing that I have to get done every day, it's a video, quite simple. And then anything else on top of that, I get a little bit more done, but that's a bonus from there. You know, I have a lot of routines and habits that I've built. I don't cook food at all. Too much energy thinking about and cooking and cleaning. I literally haven't cooked a meal for like 5 years, apart from for dates, you know, a bit different,
Sure.
but so something like that. And living in the city right now, lots of things that are convenient nearby, doesn't have to take a huge amount of time or energy to do a lot of things in life. So I've streamlined my entire existence around creating videos every day now. And I've had to eliminate a lot of things or dramatically reduce a lot of things that I would otherwise, you know, normally have had, because I realized I got this limitation with my energy. And like I said, I can push through it, but it gets a little bit more miserable as I keep pushing forward. So that's a big limitation there. But I do have a pretty unique perspective about things. I'm pretty relentless with my focus. You know, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I will literally do whatever it takes to get it done, you know, within the bounds of ethics and stuff, you know. But outside of that, if it just involves determination or hard work and it's important to me, I'll get it done. So, and yeah, I've been able to focus very well. I've actually, one of the other things about being on the spectrum is we typically have special interests. We just go really into something. It just so turns out, you know, one of my earliest special interests in my 20s, investing, becoming financially independent. So I went from here to sort of expert level within 2 or 3 years in terms of investing in real estate in Australia. I just went berserk and read tens of thousands of posts, like 100 plus books, just went crazy. And then was able to apply that, then pivot into a business doing finance because I got so good at it and blah, blah, blah. And then Tesla became another sort of special interest, even before then, but I've been focused on Tesla for a while. And now it's turned into a pretty productive YouTube channel. I've got a career now that I didn't need or expect or plan. That's just come out of having that interest and that ability to really go deep on one subject. So
yeah. Wow.
95% superpower, 5% disability.
Sure. I really appreciate your honesty there, Stephen. You really dug deep there. Thank you so much for being so open about that. I think what's even more impressive, like what's really impressive is, and I can, I'm not on the spectrum, but I can relate with sort of being drained after certain things. Like I'm more introverted by nature, so like heavy social interactions, which is surprising because people will come up to be like, "You're not introverted." I'm like, "I am introverted. I like talking to people." But like for example, last night we went to a formal for my brother's. He's part of the social group. It's the Austin social group. The initials are ASS. It's the ASS group, which is like, I'm like, ha ha ha, that's so funny. But, we went out and, had too many, old fashions. I was, I'm still feeling it right now. I don't know if you can tell my eyes are red, but I'm still feeling it a little bit.
Can't tell. Are my eyes red?
I don't know. Are they?
They definitely are. Every time.
I wonder why. But like I still like today I felt like I don't want to go around in a social setting because I felt kind of drained from that. So I can sort of relate there. But what's really impressive about you is that even with that with that side of who you are, where you do get drained with certain interactions, like the fact that you're able to come out with a video every freaking day that is dense with information, which is obviously super well researched, is super, super impressive. So like how, like now that I'm doing YouTube, I'm like always thinking about, okay, like what do I want to do? What do I want to build? And then I look at your channel, I'm like, this freaking guy every freaking day, he's got like hit after hit after hit after hit. Like how have you built, and you kind of talked about this a little bit already, but like what are the variables that you really search for that allow you to get those daily videos out that are super information dense? Like walk me through your creative process a little bit. I'm really curious to hear.
That's a good one. It varies a ton from day to day. If there's breaking news that I want to discuss, I'll just get straight onto it. It's pretty simple, right? The work's done for me that day. I always have something to think and sort of say about what I hear discussed and opinions and news and stuff. So pretty simple. Other times, I've got a gigantic list of ideas and aspects of my sort of thesis around Tesla that I want to discuss. There's probably a couple of hundred of them floating around that I'll probably get to someday. And initially when I started the channel, that's all I did. I had these arguments I was making over and over. They got a little bit more well-defined and sort of posted those. And that was probably the first 30, 50, 100 videos on the channel, just different aspects of Tesla. Now there's a lot more to discuss. And so there's always ideas bouncing around there. I always find a way to have something to say. And I think I kind of always feel like a sense of duty to people that watch the channel as well, to keep creating content on a daily basis. So it almost happens automatically. I don't know. I'm not even thinking I have to make a video today because that's just what I do. I get up, create content. So if there's breaking news, it comes together really quickly. And otherwise, just going through, thinking of one of the ideas that I'd like to articulate a little bit more and going from there.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And then the other thing that I really like about you is that you come across very confident in your videos. Like I think that's one thing that sometimes when people have conviction but they don't have confidence in their conviction, it might be tough to like sort of side with them. But like the one thing that I really appreciate about you is that you're very confident in your delivery. You're very confident in the information that you're conveying. Is that something that you learned? Is that something you were born with? Talk me through that. Like, where did that confidence come from? Yeah,
it's definitely innate. I've always been an extremely, obnoxiously confident person. I know my abilities, my capabilities. So from that point of view, just from an early age, I'm like, I'm pretty capable. Okay, this is great. And I have a lot of examples of trying to do difficult things and then being successful. And that sort of builds confidence as well.
Yeah.
But, since day one, I've been a very sort of innately confident person and always confident about sharing my opinions. I'm not sort of reserved as well. A lot of people kind of concerned about saying something that doesn't align with the consensus. Even, for example, a good thing here would be my Patreon exclusive Q&As that I do. A lot of the times people get so butthurt they quit. They watch one Q&A like, fuck this guy, I'm out of here. Because I've said something that's caused them butthurt. And I know, like, sharing my opinions about all sorts of topics, I'm going to say something that's going to offend a ton of people here, and people, sort of go from Patreon, whatever, but I don't care. I'm just somebody that always has to sort of share my thoughts. And over time, I've set what I thought were fairly ambitious goals kind of at the horizon of what I could see as possible for me out into the future. Then I get there, I'm like, oh, well, shit, now I can see further. And that kind of process has been going on now. I'm fairly goal focused now for about the last 20 years. So I have a very long track record of set a goal, achieve, set a goal, achieve. And I can only set the goals as far as I think is possible. Like if I can't see it on my horizon of possibility, I can't set it because it just doesn't feel attainable. But these goals keep expanding over time as well. And I think that's helped. So, and I am confident in what I say about Tesla. I'm so confident that I speak in hyperbole and absolutes and say things that are going to happen 10 years from, in the future, because 10 years time, they will have played out. Give or take, the timing might be a bit off. And I know I'll be right. And obviously I can't be right on everything, but 99% of the stuff I'm saying today about how things will play out in the future, I'm confident I'll be right. And I definitely want to sort of have that on the record. And the reason that I speak so in such absolutes is to challenge people who are watching my videos to go, hang on, how does this dickhead know that? How can you possibly know that? And then they start thinking through, how could I be so confident about this one thing? And if they think enough about it, they may come to the same conclusion, or they may think I'm full of it. But there's a little bit of method to the madness about that presentation as well. A lot of the hyperbole and speaking in absolutes, because I know that I'm going to be right and I'm building that sort of future credibility. And I'm wanting to challenge people along the way who go, how can you know this? Don't be so arrogant. Like, to think their way through the same issues, so they could challenge me on my opinion, and now they've thought more about it and are more informed.
Got it. That's brilliant stuff, Stephen. Like, I know for me, like, if I think about like confidence for me, like, I'm still struggling with it. I'll be completely honest, because I try to be very open and honest. Like, confidence is still, I wasn't born with it. A lot of my life situations, I'll just, I'll air my dirty laundry for everybody.
I know. Let's go.
Confidence is something that I've struggled with personally. And so it's something that I've had to learn. It's something that I've had to sort of reinforce myself. I would be in a situation where I'm like, I know what I'm talking about, but like, I'm just like afraid that if I say one wrong thing, people are going to be like, oh my God, you're stupid, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of my career experiences, working at Tesla, working at Philips before that, so being married and my wife helping me through that, friends and family and stuff, it was a learned thing for me, and I'm still learning. So like watching somebody like you is very inspiring, to be completely honest. And because I can see that confidence, and I can see just how you want to tell the truth of how you feel, and you're very passionate about it. And it's almost like truth or nothing, right? I feel like that's the kind of person you seem to be.
Sums it up. 100%.
Yeah. It's truth or nothing. And like, what I'm really curious to hear, like, you've obviously grown a tremendous audience around that sort of mentality, truth or nothing, right? This is how I feel. I'm going to tell you straight up, fuck your feelings. Here it is, right? Like, how's that feel? How does that feel to have people that want to watch you every day? You've had 200 and I think like 30,000 subs or something is still growing. Like, you think about that? How does that make you feel a certain way? Like, talk me through that. Like, is that,
I do. I mean, from day one on the YouTube channel, I always wanted to be my full and genuine self. And there's things that, a lot of people just sort of choose not to reveal about their personality or their lifestyle. And like, that's totally fine. I get it. But for me, I just am all about being radically transparent, like take it or leave it. And I was never concerned. I didn't need to make money on YouTube or this, and I don't care about subscriber growth or offending people. And so I just tell it like it is. And I think generally speaking, most people, even if they think that I'm a prick, that I'm arrogant, that I'm obnoxious, that I'm a dickhead, that I swear too much, blah, 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 they generally speaking will still respect me because they know that I am what they're getting. There's no sort of conforming to what they think that they should sort of get on YouTube, these kind of things. And I think that makes a lot of my audience a little stickier. Like, they really genuinely feel like there's a person on the other end. It's not like a kind of faux person, a bit of a sort of, puppet that's kind of contorting itself to fit the YouTube audience.
Yeah.
The first thing that I would have done, I think, if I was interested in what a typical YouTuber I think seems to be interested in, was start covering other stocks and all kinds of broaden into finance stuff, and try to be Meet Kevin or Graham Stephan and just go for that really general audience. But in order to hit a mainstream audience like that, you can't be talking about hanging out with Mary Jane. You can't be dropping F-bombs in your videos constantly and offending people and pointing out that the president of the United States is corrupt, and because you just can't do that.
Sure.
But I just am willing to say that. I know that this constrains the size of my audience, but I think the way that they feel toward me and the fact that they're sort of seeing my genuine self, there's a much stronger connection, I think, there than the average YouTube channel because of that radical honesty. And there's plenty of people that don't watch a channel because they hate the F-bombs and they get really mad about it and they just refuse to watch it, and they're lost. That's okay. But I've never been one to sort of try and please everybody. I mean, I'm the total opposite of a pleaser or a nice guy, in dating speak. I'm never really concerned about pleasing, just do my own thing and take it or leave it. So it's good that people have seen the full me and they understand what they're in for. If they're sticking around, that's great. And if not, that's fine as well.
Got it. Yeah, and that's honestly like that's what I really respect about you and what you, and that's why I wanted to talk to you so bad, because I respect you. You know, I respect you as a person. I respect you as a creator. Of course, like there may be things that you say that I'm like, okay, I don't agree with that, or wow, that was like really like colorful language, cool, you know, kind of thing. But like at the same time, I'm like, but I know he comes from an honest place. I know he comes. It's obvious that you're true. It's obvious that you're being true to yourself, and I think it's inspiring, man. And like watching you sort of go through this journey since you started and being where you are now, where you're one of the biggest voices around Tesla. You know, Elon sort of follows your channel and other YouTubers follow your channel. It's been very, very cool to see. So like, and then, you know, if I asked this question like 3 years ago, Stephen Mark Ryan, did you picture yourself in this seat? You know, this seat of influence when it comes to like people's, like, you know, how they think about certain things, how they think about Tesla. Was this even part of the dream? Was this part of a vision that you had for yourself? Like what?
Part of a vision. It's funny you use that terminology. We got a story here. So
please stay tell tuned. Me. Yeah. Okay.
So 3 years ago, okay, cool. So 3 years ago, almost to the day, I mean, we're within like 2 weeks probably. Gee, that's pretty uncanny. So yeah, about 3 years ago to the day. I was in Peru. I'd kind of gone there to figure out where to from here. So the long story short, previous to that, I worked as a designer while investing in real estate for the first sort of 8 years of my career, 7, 8 years, something like that. Then I transitioned to having a mortgage finance company because I got so good at investing and figuring out the numbers that people were coming to me for advice. I'm like, dude, I need to help these people. Did the finance thing. And then basically I was getting burnt out because of my small cup of energy every day. It was draining me. Like it was just negative the whole time. And it was like putting out fires 24/7. And so I couldn't figure out why I was enjoying what I was doing, but I needed a break to figure out why is this sort of draining me? What do I do from here? I'd reached financial independence at this point, so I didn't need to worry about money. So I decided to sell all my stuff and go backpacking in South America and do some ayahuasca ceremonies to try and figure out what are the next steps. So 3 years ago, you know, my life was playing a few video games here and there, meeting girls during the day out in South America, going on dates at night, recycle, repeat, pure recreation. And I got very bored very quickly, you know. When you're going on a date every single night for like a couple of months in a row, it's like, what am I doing with my life, you know? And so got very bored of that. I'm like, what am I going to do? And this was just kind of in between time before my ceremony. So I go to the ayahuasca ceremonies and I figured out where to from here. It's pretty simple. Start sharing some of my ideas on a few different topics on YouTube because I have a goal of having a positive impact on 1 billion plus people. And it's a goal to keep me stretched because, you know, if you're financially independent, you're about 30 years old. What are you going to do with your life? So I've kind of always had these longer term goals to keep me moving. And that's a really big one that keeps me going into the future. And, you know, when I was in the ayahuasca ceremonies, I realized that I need to do something that scales, and YouTube was instantly use YouTube as a platform. What do you know about? A lot about? The first thing is finance. So a few things. I actually had a previous channel to sort of warm up and get used to YouTube as well. I did like 100 plus videos on that. That was just really sort of timeless dating stuff. Obviously had a bit of experience dating previously. And so got that out of the way, got a little bit more polished with YouTube. And then I finished the last video and immediately started the channel. It almost looks like the channel took off on Tesla and I just abandoned the previous channel. But I had pretty much recorded all of my final videos for that anyway, got the ideas out, and then it was onto YouTube for the finance stuff. And it just so happens that a few people were interested in what I had to say. So kind of on this path now. 3 years ago, I would have had no idea. It was a few weeks before doing my ceremonies, but it makes total sense to me now. And the other big benefit is that previously when I was doing work, I didn't really understand about managing my energy every day. But now I can. Like, this is the perfect thing for me to do because it's all dependent on me. I'm not putting out fires. There aren't emergencies to deal with and surprises along the way. So I can just get my head down and actually get the content created. So I think I'm going to be doing this for a very, very long time.
That's awesome, man. Wow. So do you feel then that you've found your calling and you're fully on your path to sort of like 100%. Really bring whatever you need to bring to humanity? Like you feel like you're on that path? Of
course, 100%. I've always been moving in the right direction. Well, at least for the last decade or so, decade and a half. But it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower until I'm like just laser focused and there's no possible other thing that would be the better thing to be doing at this point in time. So I finally gotten to that point. Obviously, over time, things may evolve and change, but I think I'm going to be creating content for the next couple of decades.
Wow, man, that's amazing. Wow, because you're not the first person that I've heard talk about these ayahuasca experiences. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like how, like, you know, some people say woo woo, you know, drug, whatever, festival thing, blah, blah, blah. And then other people like swear by it. They're like, this is truly life changing. And, you know, like, do you feel like that was really a very important part of your discovery process? Or do you think that you would have found this road without it? Like, how do you think about that?
I mean, I can't know whether or not I would have kind of gone down this path otherwise. I'd certainly thought about YouTube years before. There's a goal list that I found the other day from 2013 or 14, like start a YouTube channel on this, that, and that. It was about finance. I'm like, what? Right. I read that nearly 10 years ago. But I think at this point in time, actually, 1 second, I've got a bit of an issue with my computer's. Hang on a sec. Could I, 1 second, man? Sorry.
No problem at all.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I don't know where we were. Let's
no problem. No problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Popped up over there. Yeah. Okay. So what were you saying?
So the question was ayahuasca. Like, was it mm-hmm. something that was crucial to your discovery process?
Yeah, it was super crucial. Yeah. Okay. Just the certainty, the clarity I got during that ceremony. I mean, I did 4 separate ceremonies, different focuses, I guess, but the overarching goal of the ceremonies was figure out what to do with my life from here. I don't need money now. What do I do? That was it.
Right.
Where to from here? And I just got absolute clarity, like laser focus, like it has to be YouTube, and had absolute conviction and certainty. I don't think I would have developed that level of conviction and certainty otherwise. And that probably would have, you know, let's say I decide to start a YouTube channel in the future, but I don't have the same level of conviction and certainty. Am I going to be dropping F-bombs and talking about weed on the first couple of videos? I don't know. I mean, I can't even put myself in that shoes, but I think just having that incredible sense of conviction and certainty about what I need to be doing, everything else kind of, faded away. So if I hadn't done the ayahuasca ceremonies, no idea what I'd be doing. Probably not YouTube, and certainly wouldn't have that same level of belief. I mean, I'm very confident in general, but this goes from being confident to it's already done. You know, like when I launched the YouTube channel, I'd probably had listed out maybe over 100 ideas for future videos already that I was going to do. It wasn't like, I'm going to try YouTube and see what happens, you know. It's like, I have to get these ideas out, especially because people don't understand this about Tesla. I have to get it out before it does what I think it's going to do, or I'll never be able to live with myself. So mission accomplished on the first part. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I feel like I can relate to that because that's sort of where I'm at in my life. You know, I'm 35, and sort of the path that I've gone through is, you know, my wife and I are incredibly lucky to be where we're at now. You know, we're financially good through all the hard work that we've done, and sort of this YouTube channel that I've created is sort of my journey to figure out what the hell am I here for? You know, like, what am I supposed to do? And like in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to like, you know, I've been following Tesla since 2012, 2013. I'm an early-ish investor, and so I'm passionate about the company. And I've seen things in there that really help me with my conviction. And, you know, there are things that I've learned that I'm trying to sort of get out there for people to enjoy. You know, like that's sort of what I'm thinking. But at the same time, it's like there's still. By the way,
just sorry to interrupt, but you're doing a great job of exactly that. Like, it's really cool to. It's seriously, like, I'm watching your content. I don't comment on a lot of videos. I'm watching a lot more than you would imagine, but you have very useful insights. You're very articulate and great at sharing your ideas as well. And previously, there's a lot of people that don't work within Tesla talking about Tesla, but it's great to have the perspective from somebody that's been in the company and actually has something useful to say about their experience, and is also just a very insightful person in general. So you're adding a lot of value to the community. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet, Stephen. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Truly, that's super awesome. Thank you so much. And you know, that's one thing that I was really set out. That was my primary goal in doing this, is like, I feel like there's value I can bring to the community. So this is what I'm going to try to do, you know, and I'm sort of bumbling my way through it, and I'm learning certain things. Freaking editing is a pain in the ass, you know, thumbnails and titles. Like, what the hell? Like, I never thought about building a thumbnail in my life, you know.
It's hard work, you know, like this stuff matters. Yeah, like you have to spend a lot of time thinking about thumbnail, and people are like, what do you use the same colors? It's easy, man. But there's actually a lot that goes into this stuff. So
yeah, because you can tell. Well, so. Yeah, I'm trying. And what's interesting about your thumbnails, like, it's brand, right? You have a very specific brand. It's that sort of like greenish, black, sort of like, that's the Stephen Mark Ryan video. I know it's right there,
that's right? The whole idea. Yep.
And so you do everything yourself? Do you do all your thumbnails, titles, editing? Like, you do everything end to end?
I do everything. Yeah, I'm way too much of a control freak. And it also, back to the energy thing, it actually takes a lot of my energy to explain to somebody else how to do something. I'm like, could I just be expending that energy myself, just doing it better? Or like, that's actually a serious consideration I have to have every time I'm thinking about delegating and stuff. It's actually counterproductive in most cases.
Gotcha,
I know that sounds like counterintuitive, but it actually is counterproductive in most cases. So
yeah. No, I respect that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so what would you say is the hardest part of running the whole deal that you got going on? Like, production, coming up with the ideas, the editing part of it. Like, what's the thing that you almost like, I don't know if dread is the right word, but like, what's the part I'm like, shit, like that's so hard. Like I got to do this every day. Or this came up. Like what is that variable?
There's nothing that in the process that I don't actually enjoy doing. Okay. I think a lot of that's tied to, the bigger picture, the mission that I'm on. I want to impact people. So I don't know. I don't really sort of dread any tasks. The only thing that's really a challenge every day is I really wish I had the energy and time to do 2 or 3 videos a day. I've got the content, the ideas. I want to, but I just am literally absolutely fucked after I've made a video for the day. My brain is just done, right? And so if I push anything beyond that, there's going to be a penalty to pay. Otherwise, I could be making 2+ videos a day, maybe 3 videos a day consistently. If it was my 20s, I probably would be. There's a lot more stuff that I want to share than I'm able to. Some videos will never see the light of day because there's only so much I can do. It's not sustainable. I can do a little bit more for a short period of time, but it seems like a sustainable amount of content for me every day is one video around that sort of, I don't know how long they are, 12, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. That's the thing I struggle with the most. I wish I had the time and energy.
Yeah. Wow. And so, like I keep going back to like, that's so interesting that, so like do you wake up so when you say that cup of energy is full, like you legitimately wake up every morning, you're like, I'm ready to freaking make a video. I'm so excited. And then by the end of the video, you're like, okay, I'm like literally done. I don't want to do this again for the rest of the day. I mean, wow.
It actually takes me a while to realize how dead I am. Once a video is done, I'm not really using my brain a whole lot. So I'll do some sort of lighter tasks and these kind of things. Like even today, like I haven't actually uploaded the video yet. I've done the recording and editing, but jumping on the call for you. So I'll do that later. But at that point in time, if I'm doing like a high productivity, high intellectual output task, I'm going to pay a massive penalty. I'm already past my sort of limit. So I have to moderate things pretty dramatically. Otherwise I'll burn myself out.
Got it.
That's when you start dreading aspects, I think.
Gotcha. And then so within the context of like all the, because I'm trying to put myself like in your shoes when you've discovered this prevention of burnout or learning how to live within your limits. Like how profound was that within the scope of other achievements you made in your life? Because it sounds really life changing. It feels like that's kind of what's enabled you to be who you are today. Was that how profound was that? Was that like top 3 things that's ever happened in your life? Like, how do you think about that discovery?
It's definitely up there. Probably top 3, definitely top 5, could even be number 1, Previous to this, like I only really realized this in the last year or 2. One of my Patreon supporters, we were chatting and she's like, oh, autism. She did this Googling and next minute she finds a bunch of videos and sends me one. And I learned something about myself. And I was like, wow, I should really learn more about this. And then I discovered about energy. And so I've been down this rabbit hole and it's completely changed my life for the better, managing my sleep better, my energy, my health, my mood, just everything's sort of humming along. Previously, I would describe my life at peak sort of sitting around that 8.5 out of 10 sort of range if I was to give it a rating. But this has just been that final breakthrough to get to a 10 out of 10, like every day. I really genuinely love what I'm doing every single day. Like I don't need to make the videos. I just really enjoy doing it. This is what I was saying before, making a video is almost automatic every day. It doesn't it just happens. And I get so much fulfillment and satisfaction out of what I'm doing, and I don't need the extra income. So this is all being diverted to invest, and ultimately that's for philanthropy. So I have this long-term vision of doing good in the world and accumulating capital, which kind of keeps me hungry to keep generating income, even though this isn't the primary purpose. And then I've got this really strong mission that just conveniently these two things kind of, work in tandem with each other. And I feel fantastic. And before I understood about the energy management, I would just burn myself out. I would have been doing interviews every day. I would have done like 200 interviews in the first 2 years of the channel probably. Yeah. And I would have been loving it. And then I also would have been completely dead the whole time. Like, man, why is it such hard work to do videos every day? Yeah. And learning about this now, it's just, things are humming along really well. So glad for the insight. Shout out to my Patreon supporter who sent me down that rabbit hole.
That is awesome, man. That's amazing how that works. The fact that you've sort of created this channel and have that support allowed you to sort of have those breakthrough moments. It's like, it's amazing how life works sometimes, it's like, it is, man, yeah. That's great. That's inspiring to hear. Like burnout is something that I'm constantly having to, like, it's something that I've literally learned how to manage lately. And I think Tesla taught me how to do it, because freaking that thing drove me into the freaking ground from time to time. You know, like working there is so freaking challenging, and we had a small business at the same time, and like trying to do both was extremely difficult. And you know, I learned my limits. You know, I'm like, okay, like just because, and I sometimes look at Elon and I'm like, okay, Elon's running SpaceX, Elon's running Tesla, he's got Neuralink and Boring Company, he sleeps 5 hours a day, he's got 6 kids, and he goes on media and he works on engineering stuff 16 hours a day. If he can do it, I can. And I'm like, no, the fuck I can't. No, I can't.
He's a freak. You know? He's a freak of nature. You know, he really is. He's got like his trait conscientiousness is like 100 out of 100, extremely rare. His energy levels, his ability to endure pain and suffer is just unparalleled. There's never been a guy, I think, like Elon. Like Elon will suffer from the same challenge of limited energy every day, right? But he's not a little bitch. I'm like, I'm going to recover and rest, and Elon's got a mission to accomplish. Like that. That's what's happening. I'm stunned that the guy hasn't just had an absolute burnout yet.
I agree, man.
You know, like it's incredible, but it's just, I think to Elon, the mission's so compelling, and he has those traits that kind of help as well. And he's willing to suffer an unlimited amount of pain and discomfort that he just makes us all look like a joke.
It really does. It's like, I feel like oftentimes like would feel so insecure about myself. It's like, holy, like how can I match that level? And I'm like, I just can't. Like some people are just exceptional at certain things, you know? And sometimes I worry about his health. Like, I'll be completely honest. I'm like, oh my God, is he going to die from a heart attack at 55? Because he's because he doesn't have an off switch. Maybe like his doom is that off switch does not exist. You know, it's like literally just on at 100% all the time. Yeah. You know, does that ever cross your mind? Like his health?
Look, to be honest, I mean, Elon certainly could lose some weight if you're talking about health ideals, but I think a lot of people don't really consider the fact that he has access to the world's best healthcare advice, medicine, the lot. It's fairly naive to not assume that Elon is taking advantage of a lot of things that can help him be more productive, have more energy, sleep better, like these kind of things that are aligned with Tesla's mission. Yeah. So Elon's not obviously doing everything that he could, but if you have only so much energy and focus every day, most billionaires are extremely overweight. Think of some examples that aren't, unless they're like really, really young, because it's like so extreme focused in this direction. A lot of other things fall to the wayside, but they still end up living to quite old age because they've got access to great healthcare. So I'd be surprised if Elon isn't aware of and taking advantage of a lot of things to help with longevity and health. You know, we'll see, but I'm not super concerned about that. And I think if it got to a point where it was a major concern, you know, Elon's like 350 pounds, somebody would be like, bruh, you want to get to Mars or you want to fucking die?
Yeah.
And that'll be it, you know. So I think we'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay. That's a great point, you know. And I think oftentimes when I think about the context of like Elon's health, I'm like, I'm putting him in my body. And I'm like, okay, if Elon does what he's doing with my body like breaks down at 45 and that's it. It's curtains, as he likes to say, you know, it's over. But that's so true. Like the context of his existence is different because he has access to many different resources. And who knows, he might be genetically gifted. Maybe part of his ability to go 100% is that he has a body that can support going 100%.
Oh, you know? He truly does. If you've heard about his malaria story, he physically is quite resilient. Right. And even the story, I think in Ashley Vance's book from 2014 about some guys were cycling up a hill and Elon just won't quit. And he ends up, I don't know how much further behind them, but he eventually gets to the top, still standing on the bike, climbing this sheer incline. And he's like got a purple face because he just wouldn't quit, wouldn't give up.
Man.
Right. Most people would literally have a physical reaction and like fall off the bike half dead. And Elon's body just kept going. Like he literally looked like he was dead, purple face or whatever. And just pushed. So I think that he certainly has a good combination of traits for working your face off and being efficient. And he's obviously got a gigantic brain, you know. If he did a standard IQ test, he'd be what, 1, 2, 3. He'd be like 4 or 5 standard deviations above average, like 0.0001%. Just he's a freak intellectually. I think he has some of the best sort of visual faculties of anybody in terms of being able to model things as well. He's talked about how he can picture and rotate things, which a lot of people don't have. Can't do very well. And so it helps a lot with the engineering stuff. The guy can execute. It's just a phenomenal package. Just if you roll the dice, you know, in terms of human genes, eventually you get a combination like Elon. Yeah. So he definitely does have a few things working in his favor.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. When he announced that he had Asperger's, was that like as somebody on the spectrum, like did that mean anything? Like, did you feel a sense of like pride? Did you feel a sense of like, like closeness to him, was that a non-event? Like, was that even a thing?
Yeah, it didn't really. I mean, I knew he was autistic. It's obvious as fuck. Like, I can spot it a mile away.
Sure.
There's plenty of people that I could name. I won't, for their personal reasons, but in the Tesla community that are autistic and don't even realize it, or probably sort of aren't diagnosed. It's very clear to spot. So I wasn't surprised, but it was nice that Elon pointed this out. I think I saw a reaction from Joe, one of the hosts on CNBC, the next couple of days. I think he must have a son on the spectrum, and Joe was
I remember this. I remember that. Was
like, and Becky as well was getting a bit teared up. They kind of were struggling with their words, trying not to choke up and they were saying that it helps them see Elon in a different light. And I think that a lot of people react very negatively to something that's different, like Elon, or myself. It's a response. Like, that person's weird or different, and they get a negative perception, or they're not interested in engaging. And I think it kind of helped a lot of people who dismissed Elon negatively, who aren't closed-minded douche lords, to go, hang on a minute. Oh, that explains why it's different. So I think it's actually kind of broken down some barriers to a lot of people that just assumed that Elon was a bad person or didn't like him for some reason. They understand, his behavior is a little bit different, right? As he said, I invented the electric cars and reusable rockets. Do you think I'd be a chill, normal dude?
Right.
And I think that was a fair point. So I think it didn't really make a difference to me, but I think it's pretty cool that, a lot of people have taken a second look and go, I won't have been premature to judge this guy. So.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I do remember that the CNBC, the names, that's just hilarious. You're like, I think the only person who called it CNBC. I'm like, oh my God, that's so freaking funny. But it was. How many
people corrected me for the first 6 months at least on the channel, and then somebody
didn't think it was a joke.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah, people thought that I was making
that's
a mistake.
Amazing.
Many of them, and I never corrected them. I just let it go on the comments.
That's so funny. But like watching his reaction was sort of like a very eye-opening moment for me, because I think it really did sort of shift some of the narrative around Elon as a human being, and I think especially nowadays with billionaire bad, like if they have these blanket, sort of these, I don't know what the hell is going on with our society, but like, you automatically are a bad person because of this label, right? And sort of him being vulnerable in a sense and open about maybe something that some people might want to be private about, or things that are seen a certain way, that show vulnerability. I think that did sort of solidify with some people that, hey, like this is actually a legitimately good person, and this is like something that it's neither positive or negative, but it's a thing that he has, or whatever you want to call it. And it really helped him, like it humanized him in a way, either on purpose or accidentally. It humanized them, and I think that is so freaking important in today's world. Like so many people that can be so good for society are often mislabeled, or like view it as evil or whatever else, because of they sort of project their own greeds and sort of weaknesses onto that person. They're like, well, this person's just bad. And I felt like that was such a big moment for him as a human being to sort of make that announcement. And I don't know, it's just seeing people like that viewing him positively, especially somebody like me that has followed his story and passionate about his companies and sort of what he's trying to do. I don't know, it made me emotional, because I'm like, oh my God, like people might view him differently. Like he is trying to do something good. Like you can tell he's a good person. He's a good person, It's
amazing that some people can't read Elon, and they just don't see that. Like it's actually one of the most interesting things that I think about is the psychology of people who see Elon and didn't just read one headline, but actually, do a little bit of digging and then decide that he's evil or dishonest, or they hate the guy, or like the psychology of people that are in that such dark place that they look at Elon and that's what they see. It's like, I think it's reflecting something that they don't like in themselves, or it's really fascinating to me. Like it's just a very interesting psychological study. Like, how can you misunderstand this guy's intentions? He's sacrificed his entire adult life trying to make the world better, works crazy hours, doesn't live a lavish. Like, what is it that about this guy that troubles you so much? It's really fascinating to me.
It really is. It's weird. And I don't know if I'll ever understand it, to be honest, because maybe that's just part of human psychology that I just, maybe I need to learn more about psychology. I don't freaking know. Like, I just don't know how people get to that sense. I'm very blind to that side, but who knows? But yeah, that was a fascinating thing that happened. And I think it helped him in a way, being humanized. And maybe it will help other people view people for who they actually are more, instead of like just assuming they're bad people and then, whatever. I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit here now, but I think
you've got a good point though. I think people shouldn't judge prematurely, and they should really give people a fair chance and always assume the best until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
Don't jump to conclusions, because but when somebody's made up their mind about somebody, it's game over, So
for sure. So you live in Australia today, Stephen?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
At the moment. Mm-hmm.
Do you view yourself being there long term?
Hard to know. A year ago, I would have said, no, I'll be living in Austin. But at this point in time, I'm having a lot of fun. I mean, I'm not a big fan of tyranny and fascism, so not on board with everything that's happening in Australia at the moment. But generally speaking, I really enjoy living here. It's a great lifestyle. I'm close to the most beautiful harbour in the world, so I enjoy it here. But long term, I see myself living in the US. Visa application process underway at this point in time.
Nice.
It's a bit of a convoluted path, and I might get knocked back to this after be this, but I'm not in an urgent rush to get that done. So at some point, I see myself living in the US, and I've actually considered maybe spending 6 months of the year in Australia, 6 months in the US. I'm thinking a little bit differently now. The resources available have sort of increased over the last 1-2 years, so it might be possible to split time between two countries. Because obviously my family's in Australia, so I don't want to, zip off overseas forever and not really getting back to see them. But I like it here, and I spent a bit of time in Austin too. That's where I wanted to move. So nice. I'll probably be living there sometime, at least for part of the year in the future. We'll catch up.
Hell yeah. Oh, please do. Yeah, I love it. We moved here October 2020, and we freaking love it. Like the people here are so sweet. Like everybody's so nice.
So the barbecue. It's amazing. The culture is just awesome. Yeah.
It's like so fascinating because I'm originally I was born in Spain. My parents are from Iran. They were born in Iran. I was born in Spain. And then we moved to the States when I was 12, and I lived in the Northeast for most of my, life. Right. And the sort of people that are there are good people, but boy, like I think like the snow and the lack of sun pisses people off a lot. And so they're like the warmth is in there. Yeah. It's gotta be something, And down here in Texas, everybody's like, hey y'all, how y'all doing? Let's go have some barbecue. I don't know, like whatever. I'm being stereotypical now, but
No, but that's actually pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's really true. Yeah.
It's really fascinating. I would recommend it. Like if you are looking to move to Austin or spend some time in Austin, like having lived here, I freaking love it here. So I would give it a huge stamp of approval.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously
everyone who's smart seems to be moving there as well. So
yeah, big migration. And then I know you're big into real estate. Like the real estate prices here have just completely, we bought a house here in October 2020. It's doubled already. It's like,
I've been screaming about this since Tesla announced their factory, and even more so after visiting Austin. I was there. I was like seeing a few real estate agents, friends and stuff sort of connected to that part of the community there, and asking about prices moving, and absolutely ballistic at the moment. I think within sort of the first 6 months of me being in Austin to sort of leaving, prices moved about 30-35% on houses, and it's still just getting started. All you got to do, how much are houses in a comparable tech-based city elsewhere in the US, and then just run the clock forward far enough, and eventually Austin probably gets there too.
It's so true.
It's going to take some time, but and when I was staying on Airbnb, I got absolutely just reamed. I was living in a crappy studio apartment. I needed it with fast internet, so it kind of my priority. I was not even in the city, and I was paying an obscene amount of money, like more than I could rent in Sydney, probably like a 3 or 4, maybe a $5 million apartment, probably about a $4 or $5 million apartment for what I was paying per week in rent on Airbnb, because there was nothing available, because everyone with money from California coming to Austin to buy a place. And in the meantime, they're on Airbnb. So it was just incredible. So there's a lot of indicators there, and it's obviously not going to stop. Tesla, all the employees scaling up, big boost to the economy.
I really think Elon is really trying to make this area into like Mars beta, and I can't remember if he talked about this or not, but like it really seems like, he's got Tesla, he's got 3,100 acres, by the airport, a gigantic amount of land there. Who knows what kind of stuff he's going to build there. You got the SpaceX stuff south of here, and there's so much land in Texas. There's just so much freaking land that's super affordable. It seems like, and that's one of the main reasons why we moved here. Cause I'm like, man, like Elon likes to build stuff and he likes to trial things on Earth before he puts it on Mars. Like Starlink is obviously the communications system for Mars. Tesla is obviously the transportation mode that we're going to have on Mars, right? But what are other things that are needed on a colony when you first get it up and running to ensure that when people start arriving, it doesn't just collapse, right? Like, why wouldn't he make this area into that trial, into that beta? And so like longer term, I think that's where this area really is going to like boom. Like when he talks about being the biggest boom town in the US in the last 50, 60 years, I think it's directly correlated to that in some way. I don't know if that sounds crazy or not, but.
No, I don't think so. I mean, like I said, some of my friends that I made in Austin when I was visiting last year are in real estate. A couple of the agents I was talking to where I was saying, like, if I can arrange finance, can you make some calls? If I'm like overseas in Australia and I've got the money and blah, 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 can we finance a few deals? I wanted to buy real estate in Austin.
Yeah.
When was I there? Like February this year, March and April. Really desperately wanted to buy a couple of houses, just the median type of house there, 350, 400K, somewhere around there. Just have a handful of those, decent cash flow, and just sit on them for the next 20 years, maybe 30. The numbers are pretty good. But I couldn't do that without buying directly with cash. So I had to buy Tesla stock instead. But it's going to be a serious boom town, I think. So maybe buy your neighbors if you got the opportunity.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for real. So, we talked about sort of your energy levels outside of making videos, but do you still have time for hobbies? Like what does your sort of life look like outside of videos? Like, do you have hobbies? Like, what do you like to do for fun? What does Stephen like to do for fun?
Yeah. Well, honestly, making videos is fun for me. So I don't need a ton of recreation outside of that. I mean, every day I'm usually outside getting some air, exercise, for a walk. I kind of a very sort of, you might not know this, but a very spiritual, not religious, but a very spiritual person as well. I spent a ton of time in my 20s meditating. I've been on retreat. I took incalculable amounts of psychedelics, which also helped on that journey. And so I like to spend time sort of an hour plus a day outside, just really being mindful and present of what's going on. It's kind of like almost like an open-eyed meditation practice, a bit of exercise and vitamin D along the way. I catch up with friends pretty regularly as well. Regularly for me, based on my energy level, a couple of times a week. Never more than a few hours. And I had family actually, before we spoke and organizing this interview, I had family. I sort of flew them up so we could hang out for a couple of weeks. They've just gone back home as well. But, it was awesome to hang out with those guys as well. So I've got a younger stepbrother and sister, had a great time with. But it's pretty standard stuff at the moment. My days are oriented around making videos and I hang out with friends and family where I can and look after my health. I have an unconventional dating life as well, but I won't go into too much detail other than I tend to date non-exclusively. So, but that's women are a very low priority. It's always video centric and stuff. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, that spiritual stuff is, my wife has, I've been thinking about that more lately as I've sort of got more time. And like my wife's somebody that I really look to that has really she's way more spiritual than I am. And like previously I would be like, I would have this stupid mentality, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. You're just, woo, woo, blah, blah, blah. It's something or other. But like,
I used to be like that too.
Right. But
that was me to a T, man. Yeah.
So what changed? Like, I'm curious, like what changed? What was the thing that made you think about it?
Acid.
Okay. All right.
That was it.
Okay.
I discovered a way of being and feeling and some insights. And I was like, I didn't know that this door existed, let alone that I could sort of walk through. So that opened up the entire world of spirituality to me. And again, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking anything to do with religion.
Right.
No pseudoscience. Just a sense of, connectedness and love for all things, this kind of woo-woo sounding stuff. But there's actually something very serious and very valuable there as well. And I was very dismissive of meditation. And I was like, what is that crap? It's for hippies. But then I take acid and my mind is expanded. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that there was actually something there. There was a time in my 20s where I was like seriously considering basically just sitting in a cave for the next 10 years.
Okay.
And just meditating for 14, 16 hours a day, like a serious consideration.
Wow.
But the reason I didn't end up going down this path is because I'm like, how am I supposed to positively impact people if I'm in a fucking cave? Like there was a lot to explore there. And if I could clone myself, I would literally go down that path as well. So,
wow. So you were really taking it. You wanted to take it as far as you could, based on at that time. You were really taking it.
Yeah.
You were ready to commit your entire life to it. Essentially, that's how big of an impact.
Yeah. Well, the amount of insight and just contentment and well-being I was discovering by deepening my meditation practice was just it's incredible. I literally could have sat in a cave. Like if you locked me in solitary confinement for the rest of my life, if you did it today, I'd be fine. Most people would not. Psychologically, they would struggle very quickly, but I'd just be meditating like all day, every day, and just having a great time.
Wow.
So, but yeah, obviously if I'm doing that in a cave, I can't really be having a positive impact on other people. So I have to pass on that.
I wonder like how much, because one of the things I struggle with is devices sometimes, like screens. This is something my mom used to yell at me about this, but my wife as well. Get off the freaking phone. You're on Twitter too long. Mean? Yeah, right. I love you, baby. Yeah, it's she's gonna freaking tear me to shreds for that one. I already know. I want to leave it in just anyway. Fuck it. But I do sometimes wonder.
Blame me. It's my fault.
Yeah, it's Steven's fault. Damn it.
Exactly, yeah.
I wonder, like in today's age, with how much people get distracted with screens. Like I can use myself as an example. I do get, and I think that's what's sort of preventing me from really achieving close to that level of sort of serenity or like really peacefulness and mindfulness. Is like my brain is like that dopamine hit is legit. It does feel sometimes like an addiction. Like, do you think about that, about how that's harming people's ability to become closer spiritually? Like, does that ever cross your mind? I'm curious.
I haven't thought about it through the lens of preventing people becoming more spiritual, but makes total sense. It's some stuff that's quite useful and relevant to the conversation. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb 24 hours a day. I have for the last 4 years.
Okay.
I have no notifications set on anything. People all the time on my videos are like, bro, doesn't anyone message you on Twitter? Because it's always like empty. Like I basically don't get notifications from any social media at all. And I dip in when I want to. I dip in to see, have I got a message, or is it like I'm not sort of a slave to my device and to notifications, because I realized early on it is addictive. You pop on and you see this little red notification or this one or whatever, and next minute it's just a little feedback mechanism. You can lose a huge amount of time on social media being completely unproductive and doing nothing, and just from being connected to devices in general. And I think a lot of people are never going to know that there was something more there to experience, because they'll be so used to using their devices that they forget what life's like without it. And it's tough. This is one of the reasons I said earlier, I take my practice every day. I'm outside an hour and a half doing that mindful practice. I want to keep the sort of knife sharp, because if you're not doing that, it's very easy to fall into the trap of notifications and phones and devices, and you kind of miss out on the world. And there's nothing wrong. I'm not like anti-phone and anti-technology, but I don't think most people can moderate their behavior effectively.
I agree.
People, I have Instagram and I only ever go there to post content. So if you hear about me and crypto, it's not me.
Yeah, right.
Everywhere impersonating me. I don't have time to message people about crypto, but I only go there to share stuff. And I realize that most people, they actually spend 30, 60 plus minutes a day probably on social media, maybe even more. Some people 3-4 hours on social media, just because it's addicting and you get on there and you get trapped. And I'd much rather be sort of meditating and having a transformative spiritual experience than scrolling through notifications somewhere. So I'm pretty diligent about that. And I think you're right. A lot of people are going to miss out on that part of life by just being sort of addicted to their devices.
Yeah. So. Gotcha. Yeah. It's something that I really, another thing that I really admire about you is that you have been able to sort of be much closer to who you are as a person, right? Like you've really spent a lot of time doing that. It sounds like. So I always like hearing from people like that are really, going down that path. I talk to my wife about it all the time. When I spoke with Dave Lee, that was something that he also spoke about, like, his spiritual side and being closer, like, really thinking about what else is there to life kind of thing. Like he seems like a very deep thinker in that way as well. So like, I'm really trying to draw inspiration from people that have seemed to become a little bit closer. I've gotten closer to that side of themselves, like being much more introspective and really, just being within themselves and not allowing things like a freaking screen to potentially, take time away from that very valuable experience, that very valuable time, So I always think about that. And I think my thing is I just need to start breaking some habits. I just got to start it's going to be like, okay, off I gotta do what you gotta do. Like what you do is do not disturb, turn off all notifications. I'll probably start deleting social media apps here and there. The one thing that's interesting, like now that I run the YouTube channel, and I have a data background, so like analytics are things that I'm always looking for, but I feel like I shouldn't. Do you have any advice for me here? Like how should I treat analytics?
Well, it's a slippery slope. There can be some useful insight there.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I've never really been focused on metrics until the last couple of months. I actually, just out of interest, I started listening to some interviews with Mr. Beast, because obviously there's something that you can learn from this guy. I learned a ton of stuff, a lot of which doesn't really apply, but it's given me a lot more appreciation for some of the data you can find on videos. In particular, the best sign of a video that's great is average watch time in percent terms. How much of the video did people watch on average? And that's something that I've paid attention to out of interest. What did I think this video would do versus another? And it's good to sort of build my model in my mind of what's probably going to perform relatively well. But I'm not really applying a whole lot of this because I'm just making the videos I want to. But I can tell in the back of my mind, I'm like, people are going to get mad. They'll hate this video or not watch this, or this is going to probably retain people better. And I generally have an intuition. So sometimes I'll compare intuition versus the reality just to see, is my mind on the right path? And that's about as much as I do there. It's very easy to get sort of lost and trapped in the numbers. I know a few content creators who'll post a video and then immediately start refreshing and change the thumbnail and try and figure out. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're making a business, if your channel is a business and that's how you view it, you probably should be doing that. But from me, point of view, it's more recreation. I'm doing it because I want to. So I don't follow all the best practices and don't get too crazy in analytics. But it's definitely worth paying attention just to see what's going on at a pretty broad level. But you can spend too much time there, I think, as well.
Yeah. That's the one thing I'm really trying to prevent myself from doing, because I can see how it can become addicting. It's like trying to optimize everything. And I think ultimately, I think the thing that's going to be more helpful is like just do the best you can. And then if people find value in it, they'll come. If they don't, whatever, who cares? And it is what it is. So,
I think, if you follow the data the entire way, it won't be long before every video is like, 10 stocks to buy now. That's what will happen. Yeah. And if that's what you want to do, then that's fine. But that's what following the data precisely will lead to.
Right. So, exactly.
I already had up in the same sort of place.
Yeah. I had folks already like, trying to give me advice, in the comments. They're like, please don't turn into this clickbait guy. You're please. And what's always so fascinating, I'm like, I just, it means a lot to me that people care so much that they want me to be as honest as possible with my content without trying to deceive them in some way that they should click on something. So I really appreciate that. But at the same time, I'm like, holy shit. Then I start putting pressure on myself. You better not make a thumbnail that's going to piss people off, So it's like this thing now. But it's a blessing in a way, It's a blessing because I'm so lucky to be able to do this, as a hobby. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, Stephen. I think you were going to say something.
No, it's fine. Okay. I think I was done. Yeah.
Okay. I got you for a couple more minutes here, Stephen. I want to ask you a couple more fun questions here. Okay. So you've really happiness is something that I try to ask my guests, but it does seem like you've really discovered happiness, and you seem like you've yourself well enough to know what that path looks like. Is that an accurate assessment? Like, do you feel like you have found happiness, and how do you think about being happy?
Yeah, I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about happiness. I mean, it was the first major problem I wanted to solve before the money problem. So I was thinking in the past, when I was really young, like 20 or something like that, maybe 19, what's the most important things to focus on in life? Now I'm a young man, I've got my career ahead of me. And I realized that happiness was number one, health was number two, money was number three, and then impact, doing something once you've got enough money was the sort of fourth thing. That's where I wanted to focus. I'd rather be unhealthy and happy than sort of, healthy and unhappy. So for me, happiness has been something that I've been sort of working toward, like hacking and understanding and optimizing for the last, call it 20 years, give or take. Psychedelics are part of the story, meditation, many other things as well. And I think what I've learned over time is that for somebody with my personality traits and if you're familiar with the terms masculine and feminine, not referring to men and women, but just the kind of traits that come along, like masculine, like decisive, leader, getting stuff done, breaking through barriers, growing in the face of challenge. Feminine, more nurturing, colorful, variety, just very, very different sorts of traits. And most people have a mix of masculine and feminine. Most guys are a bit more masculine, most women are a bit more feminine, but sometimes there's variation. I'm like just at the absolute far end of the scale on masculine traits.
Okay.
So for me to be happy is actually extremely simple. And for any guys who are the same, who have a very masculine traits. For me and most guys that are like that, you just need a really compelling mission, and that's it. Everything else doesn't matter. I mean, it's useful, but if you are just all in focused on a mission that really matters, if you accomplish it and you're really focused on that, you solve the happiness problem as a guy. Now, obviously, you can't let your health go too bad in this country, but that's the thing to be focused on. And I think a lot of guys are too scared to really focus on having a meaningful mission and purpose because they're working a job like, oh, what if I quit? I can't provide for my family, or this, that, and the other. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that a lot of guys do wrong in life in terms of happiness is they're not on their mission. They're just working a job. They're somebody else's bitch. They're doing something they don't like. They're just trying to provide for the family. And this is the kind of people living their lives of quiet desperation. You know, you don't really hear from these guys. They're not complaining like, hey, how you going? Yeah, good. Everything, how's work? Yeah, it's fine. But they're like, at the end of the day, they don't go to bed at night thinking I did something meaningful that was in line with my purpose and I'm realizing my potential. So very simple for me. The way to solve that mission is kind of something that's taken a while to figure out. You know, I was in the finance business and I thought that would be it, but that wasn't sustainable because of my energy levels. But it's really simple. Be mission focused and be on a really compelling mission. And obviously, everyone's has different physiology. So the mood's kind of like weather. Some people are going to have a few more cloudy, rainy days, and others not so much. And I've never really been somebody that sort of had poor moods in general. But yeah, the solution was pretty simple for me. Just find a clear, compelling mission and purpose and just relentlessly pursue that. And everything else is secondary. It's working out pretty well. So it's a little bit harder, I think, for people that aren't so singular in their focus and their traits. But it's like just angle a carrot in front of me and I'm good. So carrot's the mission. I'm just going to keep running. Yeah.
But I think that discovery process of knowing that's who you are as a person, I think there's a lot of work that went into that too. So like even though the outcome might be simple in a way, it really the work that you did to get to that conclusion was grueling, I'm sure, in a way, or like it was long.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I've spent like a good 2 decades, and I've done courses, books, seminars, you name it. I mean, I've read hundreds of books, mostly on personal development and growth. And I've gone to Tony Robbins seminars. Shout out to Tony. Got some really useful stuff, even though he's kind of insane. I spent time thinking about my traits, my values, what I want. Like I've gone through this process, spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours probably on this challenge. Wow. But where it's led me to is a very clear understanding of who I am and what I need to be happy. So I'm just implementing.
Awesome, inspiring stuff. It really is. That's freaking great. So five years from now, 2027, have you thought about who you're going to be? Like have you laid out a plan for your goals that far in advance, or how much detail is there in that 5-year plan, if it even exists? I'm curious to hear.
I do have 5-year goals and 10 and a bit beyond that. I'm usually a lot clearer on the short-term goals, sort of next 3, 6, 12 months. And then the next few years, it's a little bit gray. I've got kind of some general ideas. So I've got goals in terms of income and finances and stuff. But the truth is, it's basically going to be the same as it is today. I've got in my mind that I'm kind of going to be focused at least until I'm 40. I'm 36 now. At least until I'm 40, just all in focused on the channel. Maybe around 45 to 55, I'm now considering the possibility of family. It's a long story, but I'm not in a rush to have a family. I think that's a mistake a lot of guys make as well. Not all guys, of course. But no, there's a lot of guys I think that feel obliged by society just to get into family and have the kids and work hard. And that's a great path to unhappiness over time if you haven't worked on yourself enough before getting to that point, because you lose a lot of time and the freedom to think about purpose and mission and these kind of things. So the only real change I think between now and the next 5 years, maybe an exclusive relationship, but probably not in a rush there. I think I've got between 45 to 55 to make that happen. And as I've said, I think generally speaking, guys over time tend to accrue value to most women. They're better providers, they're more competent, more established in their careers. So unlike women who have sort of the biological clock, I think guys can take a bit more time. So that's definitely a goal in the longer term. But 5 years, it's probably just going to be the same shit. Making videos about Tesla every single day and swearing too much.
Okay. I like that. So that's great.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. That's awesome. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that honest answer. And then I got a couple more questions. I like these. I label these as very important questions at the end of my video. And I'm curious to hear your answers here.
I can tell they're going to be very important. I
Very
can tell.
important. How do you like your eggs?
Usually scrambled, but
Okay.
I'm a bit of an egg whore. In the past, I've eaten like dozens a day. They're a great source of protein and a few other vitamins and stuff. So I sometimes mix it up, but scrambled is with a lot of butter is my general preference.
Nice, nice. Yeah, scrambled is my favorite too. It's freaking love it. Love it.
Nice.
Coffee or tea?
Nice. Coffee for sure.
Okay.
Best drug on earth. Yep.
Yeah. So are you
Really
a
great.
big is caffeine something that you take in quite a bit?
3 shots a day.
3 shots a day. Okay.
Pretty measured approach. I try to have it before about 8 or 9 a.m. at the latest, 10 or 11, so it doesn't affect sleep in the evening. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's literally the greatest drug on the planet, I think, in terms of the effects. It helps with mood, energy, focus, all sorts of things. And in addition to that, the benefits of the antioxidants. Like people, even if they can't drink coffee, it affects them, should be drinking like decaf, a couple of shots a day for health. It's that beneficial. So I love it. Positive effects, and it's good for you. Winning.
Yeah, for sure. I started drinking decaf for that same exact reason. I started developing some pretty severe anxiety from caffeine. So like I had a panic
caffeine
attack.
Can exacerbate that big time.
Yeah, really. It was rough. And I've been meaning to make a video about this at some point because I fought with anxiety for a little bit there in my life. And I discovered that drinking coffee was like, it was making it so much worse. Oh my God. But I missed the taste, and I knew there was some health benefits to it. So I switched over to the decaf, and it's like, I get the best of both worlds. I don't collapse from an anxiety attack, and I get to drink something I like, so it's like, I found that beautiful, exactly, winning. It feels like winning. Is everything predetermined, or do we have free will?
I think free will is illusory, but I don't think that everything's predetermined. I just don't think that human beings are actually the one operating the vehicle. There's a ton of science and studies that have been done coming at this from various angles, but it's been about 10 years or so since I realized that free will is an illusion. It's a convincing illusion, and it doesn't really change things, but it seems like the evidence of free will being illusory is overwhelming. There's some great content. Sam Harris wrote a book, I think 2011 or 2012, called Free Will. It's very short. You read it in like 30, 45 minutes. Goes over a lot of the arguments and the neuroscience behind that as well. Like one example, you can have people in the lab and tell them to choose, press this button or that button, and take a note on the clock of when they decided. And there's machines that can read their mind and realize that they've made a decision up to like 10, 12 seconds before they thought that they decided. It's a million different ways that you can look at this thing. So I think, free will is an illusion. And that actually is also pretty helpful, I think, for confidence and not really being concerned about what other people think. Because the perspective you have, it's like you're almost the passenger in what's going on. You're not consciously sort of controlling things. You're just sort of seeing what's going on. It's pretty compelling psychologically. I think it does help with a lot of traits and things that I've done in life. Just having that mindset over the last 10 years. Things are a bit different when you don't believe that you're the one in control of your actions. So I recommend everyone check out that book by Sam Harris, at least as a starting point. He's done some talks, videos on YouTube you'll find as well. Just as a starting point, if you think, what is this idiot talking about? Obviously, we have free will. Go down the rabbit hole and just see how the arguments stack up and the science there.
Got it. I'll make sure to check out that book too. I've never read it, but I'll make sure to add it to my list. Awesome. I appreciate that answer.
Yep.
Awesome. Do you think humanity can ever reach a point of no war?
It's definitely possible. Here's how it pans out. We either reach that point or we wipe ourselves out.
Right.
So if we can last long enough, eventually, I think wars kind of get, out of the evolutionary pool eventually. We're kind of trending in the right direction, but it's going to take a long time. And so between now and then, we'll see what happens. But I definitely think there's a possibility that we end up wiping ourselves out entirely at some point in the future. And if that doesn't happen, almost by default, that means that we're still around. If we can survive long enough into the future, I don't think that's going to be common. It's just at the moment, we're in a society that's a few thousand, a few hundred years old, depending on how you're viewing it, versus hardware that's like 250,000 years old.
Right.
So the hardware needs to catch up. Otherwise, things. I mean, all of the things that happen basically in terms of crime these days, practically, violent crime and sexual crime. You look back to our evolutionary history, and it all makes sense. We've just crawled down from the trees. So I think over time, if there's opportunity, it'll get sort of filtered out, but it's going to take a while.
Gotcha. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It's like, it seems, especially with like the advent of AI and what's happening, and like if we're not careful with it, it seems like that could be like the cataclysmic event that really just brings this whole thing down. But it also, the flip side of that is that it could help us achieve our ultimate purpose as a species, right? So, yeah, I got to think about it. Like, I really started thinking about it a little bit more lately, but I have so much more effort that I have to put into it, like thinking about it, because I think that's really going to help us understand what the future is going to look like. Because we are going that direction, and the AI's forcing function on war, and what that means is, I don't think can be understated. And we're really getting into a weird place now where, especially with like different countries with like trying to gain AI dominance, is going to be very interesting. The variables are very, very interesting now.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. That's an understatement.
Yeah, freaking crazy.
Yeah. I lose a lot of sleep about AI.
Yeah. And it's really and I want to go back to like a split second, but like that, I still feel like that earnings call is the way that Tesla shifted its tone so heavily towards AI is like, is not understood at all outside of maybe a few folks like that. Like, it's almost like a genesis, like a starting point of like Tesla really becoming an AI company, and its future products are going to be, we're going to go look back to this call and be like, this is kind of where it all became public. Like, this is, it was the coming out party. I don't know if you agree with that or not, 100%. But it felt that monumental.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think a lot of people won't understand the implications, but it's all laid out there. Tesla is really focused now. It's all just basically on AI. FSD, Elon all call was like, FSD is so freaking big, you guys don't understand. You're not, like, it's big, guys, it's so big. And then he goes on and says, an Optimus spot, that's even bigger than Tesla's entire auto business, which includes FSD and Robotaxi. And people just like, it just straight over the head, completely over the head. But stunning implications there. I think might take a few years or maybe a decade before people start to realize, but Tesla's really all in focus now on AGI. That's the end destination, and a lot of stuff in between, but AGI deployed in a humanoid robot is the sort of, I think that's the North Star Tesla's really aiming for at the moment.
Yeah.
And so everything else will happen along the way, but new focus. It's pretty cool.
Crazy potential. So fascinating. And then the last question to bring this whole thing home, what is humanity's purpose?
I don't think humanity has a purpose. I think it's up to individuals to figure out what their purpose is. I really do. And I think for some individuals, that's being the world's best mother. And for other people, it might be a musician or a great friend. Like, everyone has their own. I know this is corny, but I actually think that really that's the way things should be. I think people as humans should figure out, what's going to give them satisfaction and fulfillment. And if, as a bonus, if also at all possible, can do good for other people in some way, but in a small or significant way. I think if everybody can figure that out for themselves, we don't need to worry about humanity's purpose. I think, as a collective organism, everyone's pursuing their own individual purpose. We're moving in the right direction. I think humanity's purpose is definitely not to be enslaved to somebody else or conform to a typical conventional lifestyle and just work a job and pay your bills and not be thinking about what actually means a lot to you and what can positively impact other people.
Got it. Beautifully said. Steven, thank you so much, man. I had such a blast. This was, I feel like I really got to know you as a person, and you're an awesome dude, man. You're very easy to talk to. I really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah. But I really enjoy the fact it really does come across that you've spent a lot of time thinking about things, and I really enjoy sort of learning from those people. And I just really want to thank you for you taking the time. And you've sort of described about how this is going to be especially taxing for you from an energy level. Like, I'm so appreciative of your time. I really am. And, I feel like I've learned a lot just talking to you, and you've inspired me in more ways that you could probably understand, to be completely honest, because I find a certain energy from you that I really enjoy, and the fact that I got to sit down to get to know you a little bit better, get to talk to you has been super fun for me. And I consider myself very lucky. So I just want to say thank you so much, man, for taking the time. If you're ever in Austin, please let me know. Let me make you a brisket, bro. I'll freaking make you a brisket. Right. It's going to be delicious.
I lived on brisket in Austin. I literally lived on Uber Eats every day brisket. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll share over a beer, man. And if you're ever in town, please let me know. I would love to meet you in person as well. Any lasting thoughts? Any lasting words for the folks watching this interview?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's been a great chat. You're doing really excellent work, and I'm glad to see the channel is going well. So keep at it. You're really adding a lot of value. And in terms of everybody watching, I hope you've enjoyed. And Tesla stock, way too fucking cheap. Don't say anyone, yeah.
Even Mark Ryan said it, and usually when he says it, he's right. So you better listen to the guy.
Give me 10 years. We'll bring this clip up in 2032.
Hell yeah.
Tesla stock was less than $1 trillion market cap for the company. We'll see what happened.
Yeah,
it'll age well.
I'm right there with you, man. I 100% agree. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you, Steven. Really appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Peace out.
Peace.
Bye.
Awesome.